right. Well, hello everyone. I hope you're all doing well today. My name is Gabrielle Gane. I'm currently an English-speaking child psychologist working in Paris, France. And I'm very thankful to have been able to make it to the conference in person this year and honored to have the opportunity to share my recent research paper with you all, blurring the lines, the vague boundary between mainstream and deviant internet pornography tags for at-risk viewers. So I was very fortunate to explore this topic and write an interdisciplinary paper with my co-authors, Paul Waters, Richard Wortley, and Jeremy Pritchard, and would first like to acknowledge and thank them for their teamwork, their expertise, and for helping bring this international project to life. So our study explores the potential risk that pornography may have on the healthy psychosexual development of vulnerable users, specifically adolescents and adults at risk of progressing to more deviant and illegal forms of pornography, such as child sexual exploitation or CSEM. So to start, I'll give a very brief overview about myself, and then I'll follow with the introduction and background to our paper, the present study, including the methods, the results, discussions, and implications, and then finally have some time at the end for questions. So that's me. To mention a little bit about my background, as I've mentioned previously, my expertise is in child psychology. I completed my master's in clinical child and adolescent psychology at Utrecht University in the Netherlands, and I also hold graduate membership of the British Psychological Society. So I currently work in Paris at the Parapsychology Center and provide therapeutic support and assessments for children and families within the English-speaking community. As such, I'm relatively new to the CSEM space, and I'm constantly learning more and more about how to help create a safer virtual environment for young children. So I will try my best to answer all of your questions at the end of the presentation within my area of expertise, and happy to hear some feedback as well. So, as we all know, the rise of technology has generated a new landscape in which traditional means of healthy identity and sexual exploration are being redefined. And with the rapid development of technology as well, accessing pornography on the internet has become a global norm for sexual exploration. For example, the world's largest pornographic website, Pornhub, reported receiving 115 million website visits per day back in 2019, and this daily traffic increased by almost 25% in 2020 due to the worldwide coronavirus pandemic. So this growth has occurred because, in comparison to more traditional forms of pornography, like Chris has mentioned in his previous presentation, the internet offers immediate and unrestricted access to an array of sexual information and genres of pornography with little or no cost, and provides a perceived sense as well as a real degree of anonymity. So whilst scholars and studies have documented that popular and openly available pornography commonly emphasizes themes of aggression, male dominance, and the submission and objectification of women, evidence for the effects of pornography on sexual aggression in the general population have been mixed and contentious. So such themes of aggression, male dominance, and the submission and objectification of women, they're not only presented in the visual pornographic content themselves, but they're also presented qualitatively in the video titles and tags of videos, which are essentially short descriptors of video content and make it easier for viewers to search for specific themes of their own desire. So when a content creator uploads their own video to a website, they can attach a list of video tags which are synonymous to keywords or categories like hashtags to file and define and describe the content of their video. So this does make it a bit easier for viewers to search for specific themes of their desire. So as an example, and without getting too much into detail, tags may describe the practices displayed in the video, the characteristics of the actors, or specific filming techniques used. So whilst the majority of the general population may not develop pornography-related negative health concerns, a growing body of research suggests that a subset of individuals may be more at risk of developing such problems, and these are adolescents and adults at risk of progressing to more deviant and illegal forms of pornography, like CSAM. So just zooming into our first risk group, as we also know and have heard a lot from previous presentations today and yesterday, the internet has become an integral and prioritized part of adolescent life, with more than 90% of adolescents from varying countries using the internet each day. A recent child and media survey conducted in September 2024 by eSafety revealed that 84% of Australian children aged between 8 to 12 had used at least one social media or messaging service since the beginning of that year, and this was despite being under the age limit of 13 years and above. Additionally, online exposure to explicit sexual content has also become a normal part of an adolescent's developmental trajectory, with approximately 43% accessing pornography on a weekly basis from some studies. So there are some scholars and studies who argue that there might be benefits for adolescents viewing certain types or genres of pornography, and there can also be large individual differences in responses to pornography or to specific interests. However, there is, of course, also a concern that youth exposed to deviant or violent pornography online may be more likely to accept and adopt such sexually displayed aggressive behaviors offline. So this has implications for healthy psychosexual and social emotional development in young pornography viewers, as the aggressive behavior displayed in the mainstream internet pornography may place them at risk to develop negative or unrealistic sexual norms, attitudes, and behaviors about sexuality or relationships in general, blurring the lines between what constitutes as sexual pleasure and sexual harm. So studies show that adolescents who frequently view pornography tend to view all genres of pornography as well, notably deviant forms such as violent pornography. Such adolescents may increasingly feel desensitized to mainstream pornography and instead want to seek out more stimulating, explicit sexual content. And this is concerning, as frequent exposure to aggressive content further place youth at a higher risk of normalizing or even desiring such sexually aggressive, exploitative, and violent behaviors over time. So in terms of our second risk group, there has, of course, been a growing concern about the production, distribution, and consumption of CSAM on the internet, especially with the rapid development of technology. The onset of CSAM offending often occurs amongst individuals who have no previous sexual interest in children, as my colleague Jeremy mentioned in his previous presentation today. And the onset can also start in childhood or adolescence as well. So a recent study found that 65.3% of their participants who were self-identified CSAM users first were exposed to CSAM themselves when they were under the age of 18 years old. So there is concern that certain genres of legal pornography may be a pathway for CSAM for some offenders. So teen categories of pornography, often labeled as barely legal, they often do not involve the sexual exploitation of children themselves, but they seek to eroticize an adult actor as a minor. Adults who have a history of accessing CSAM also describe that they initially started watching mainstream adult pornography and then progressed from such legal material due to pop-up advertisements, considerable exposure, boredom, or simply due to the knowledge that the vastness of the internet made such extreme content easily available and accessible. So with a similar impact on adolescents, there is increasing evidence of a habituation and desensitization effect of pornography over time, where viewers become less sexually stimulated by mainstream themes and decide to seek out more novel or more deviant sexual content to achieve the same levels of arousal. And that links to our study, which set out an exploratory approach to firstly conceptually map video tags from one popular mainstream pornography website into common themes or dimensions of pornography, specifically mainstream, underage, incestual, non-consensual, and aggressive content. And secondly, to explore the potential risk that such tags and dimensions may have on the healthy psychosexual development of at-risk viewers. So we did this by firstly undertaking a top-level audit of one publicly available popular pornography website, bit of a mouthful, to scrape the video tags created and uploaded by the content creators themselves. The number of times each tag was selected by users were also scraped. These tags allow viewers to search for pornographic categories of their preference. And it's important to note that each video can have multiple tags, but each tag selection is treated as an independent choice. So this means the data reflects the type of sexual content the user was actively searching for, regardless of whether a video might also fall under other tags. No individual data from the users were collected, and at no point of the experiment did the researchers view the videos themselves. Secondly, we created an online survey for a panel of professional experts in the field of sexual offending, and we asked them to complete 2 tasks. So the first task was to allocate each individual tag into the 5 pornography dimensions, and if they believed that a tag belonged to numerous dimensions, they were directed to rank these dimensions in order of preference. In the second task, the raters were asked to assign a potential risk score, or PRS, to each tags on a scale of 1 to 10, where 1 is no risk and 10 is high risk to the healthy psychosexual development. And we defined potential risk score as any potential risk of harm relating to the mental, emotional, behavioral aspects of an individual's psychological or sexual development. So all experts had more than 15 years of relevant professional and or research experience in the sexual offending field, and the raters came from the UK, Ireland, and Australia, with 3 of the raters identifying as female and 2 as male. So for both tasks, in our instructions to the raters, we acknowledged that they may not know the precise nature and content of the material to be found under each tag, and that there will also be variation within each tag. We advise them that their responses should be based on what the text labels suggest the content will cover, and the potential for users to access material that poses a risk to the healthy psychosexual development. In this way, the tags tell us what the users were seeking, not necessarily what the videos might actually contain. At the end of the survey, we also provided an open-ended section for any comments, questions, or queries from the raters if they wanted to add anything. So a total of 149 tags were identified. If the raters were uncertain about the content associated with a specific tag, they were also asked to mark these as uncertain in our survey. And if tags were marked by at least 2 experts, they were excluded from further analysis. So because of this, 4 tags were excluded from further analysis because 2 experts indicated they weren't sure about the associated content, which left 145 tags in our analysis. We decided to focus on the raters' first preference of categorization, as where there was a disagreement, this was taken to indicate an overlap between the dimensions. So as an example, if some experts rated a tag as mainstream and others rated them as incestual, then we allocated this to a mainstream incestual category. This resulted in 13 dimensions and dimension combinations, with mainstream comprising the most tags, followed by mainstream underage and mainstream aggressive. So a robust level of internal consistency was found between the expert raters and their PRS allocations for all 145 tags. Using Kuhn Lee's General Inter-Rater Reliability ICC guidelines, we found that there was a very strong level of agreement between all 5 expert raters when allocating PRS for the 145 tags. A simple linear regression analysis was also conducted in order to assess whether the mean PRS predicted the frequency of selective tags, because we were also interested to see if there was any relationship between the two. We found that the regression was statistically significant. However, the strength of association was low, and I'll touch upon this a little bit more down the line. We also wanted to explore the tags with the highest mean PRS. So what we can see in this table are some examples of the tags, their search frequency, and their popularity rank. So the tags here displayed, they are quite confronting, but unfortunately these tags are real, and these are only a very small portion of tags that are publicly available on websites. Interestingly, we found that 11 of the top 12 tags actually involved potential underage and or incestual content. And 4 tags with the highest mean PRS were in the top 12 in terms of popularity overall. Finally, looking back again at all 145 tags, this Venn diagram visually illustrates the overlaps among the 5 primary dimensions. So here we have the mainstream category almost as an inner hub at the center of the diagram, and the 4 other dimensions arranged around the periphery. So what we can see visually is that as we move from the center to the periphery, the average PRS actually increases. So that is that the more mainstream the search term, the less risky it was judged by our expert raters, and in turn, the less mainstream the search term, the more risky it was judged to be. Notably, underage, which had a mean risk score of 8, and incestual with a mean risk of 8.5. So the findings of our study indicate a potential risk posed to vulnerable users' healthy psychosexual development. On the pornography website that we studied, it strongly appears that all users, including potentially young viewers, would be presented with a broad spectrum of intermingled content, ranging from legal mainstream pornography to material that might include CSEM or sexually abusive content. So the expert raters were in very much the same position as website visitors as they searched for videos. They made assumptions about what sorts of videos would be linked to each tag. The selection of a tag therefore indicates what the viewer thought they were going to find, and therefore reflects both their sexual interests and potentially their experience of previous searches on different pornography websites as well. So if experts with more than 15 years of experience in the sexual offending field were also not sure and were not certain about what sorts of material lay behind certain tags, it seems unlikely that a novice user would. So as an example, a new adolescent user would be bombarded with an array of tag terms, many of which communicate little information about the nature of the connected content. The relevance of this point is that by clicking on common tags, a new adolescent user is over time highly likely to be unintentionally exposed to material that might no longer be considered mainstream. A recent nationally representative study of Australian youth aged between 15 to 20 years old found that 86% of identified males and 69% of identified females had already been exposed to pornography, so the potential impact is quite high. Additionally, the Venn diagram supports reports from some internet users, including CSEM offenders themselves, that it is possible over time to move from mainstream pornography into more deviant or hardcore material, and then onto CSEM. Arguably, such a graduated pathway could be more plausible than common versions of the pathways narrative, which imply 2 main decisive leaps in the trajectory, from mainstream to deviant content, and then from deviant to CSEM. So we're not suggesting that users whose pathway to CSEM is slow and gradual have been stripped of choice. In some respects, a gradual trajectory provides more time for users to reflect on their actions and decisions. But we do think that this data adds credibility to the overall explanation that men, and some women, who might have never imagined that they would be viewing CSAM when they first started using legal pornography, did so through multiple decisions over time. As all research, our study did have some weaknesses that could be improved upon in further research. So we checked whether the mean PRS predicted the frequency of selected tags. However, the small R-squared value indicates that the strength of the association was low. So this limitation suggests that while experts consistently rated the tags, the predictive power of these ratings for actual tag frequency was weak. So this could imply that other factors just not captured by the PRS were influencing tag frequency, or that the PRS definition itself might just need further refinement to better capture the relevant predictive elements. So future research should consider incorporating additional predictive elements and potentially expanding the sample size to enhance the robustness and generalizability of the results. So the study has practical implications for the identification and regulation of potentially harmful pornography on legal pornography websites. So given the potential harms arising from exposure, governments and legal pornography websites themselves should firstly control what tags exist and also how new tags are developed, as this would prevent content creators to be able to advertise that their material contains potential CSAM or other types of illegal or harmful material. Secondly, the company should also vet all content before it is uploaded and made publicly available. And finally, screening systems should also be implemented to retrospectively eradicate potential CSAM and other forms of illegal material from the site. So the study highlights a concerning relationship and it emphasizes the need for meaningful, robust, and multifaceted regulatory measures to address and eradicate the presence of potentially harmful material on pornography websites to help create a safer digital environment for young viewers and adults at risk of progressing to CSAM. So that concludes my presentation. Thank you all for your time and attention.